everybody, and welcome into the Casual Sports Podcast. As always, I'm Alec Brenner. That's Mike Wolfgang. This is the Tuesday edition of the show here on your sports network. Mike, first time we've seen you since the weekend. How was your weekend?
You know what? I don't get the chance to say this often. All of my teams I've played this weekend won. So I can't say it often, so I'll stand out and say it because I don't want to brag, but I'll do it this time.
Yeah,
Cavs look good. Often. Cavs look good Sunday night in their home opener.
They did. We haven't talked Cavs yet on the show here, so why don't we touch on them here just at the beginning of the show? We don't have a ton of teams to go over today since Matt and I kicked a bunch of them off yesterday. Got a little bit to touch on with playoffs in volleyball. But other than that, let's talk about these Cavs real quick, Mike. They're fun to watch, and I've caught a couple of the games so far. I got watched the last half of the Raptors, watched a little bit of the Wizards game, and I'd have to say, I know we didn't win both of them. We won the Wizards game, but even in the loss to the Raptors, it was just they're fun. Yeah, and they were like fun last year a little bit, but this new team, man, they're really coming together, and it's entertaining to watch. And I think it may even be more entertaining than like the early LeBron era, because that was just him that was entertaining. And now it's like the entire team is entertaining. So even if one guy's having a bad night, the rest of them are still coming right along.
Well, I think too that your point that even when the second stint with LeBron, where it wasn't just him. It just felt like it was always under pressure. Like, every loss is magnified. Like,
right.
Like this year going into this game or this season, I'm like, you know what? I expect them, to at least second round. That's my goal for them this year. At least second round because they didn't get that last year. So I'm thinking, they lost the first game to the Raptors. And I'm like, whatever. Normally I would get frustrated because they like the last couple of years you got to start out good to have a chance. This year we know what we're gonna get from them, at least in our own mind. So. For them to play good so far, that game we didn't talk about with the Bulls, they blew them out in Chicago. So yeah, they've looked good.
And remember, that's a Bulls team that really decided to put together a superstar roster of their own with DeRozan, Zach LaVine. They brought in Dosunmu in the draft, Pat Williams, Nikola Vucevic down from Orlando. I mean, they put together one heck of a roster, not to mention the fan favorite Alex Caruso.
Yeah,
and to have Cleveland go in there and win like they did, it's fun to see. And I think we're looking at a team that isn't really even fully healthy yet to start the season. No Garland so far, and to have such a key piece of this team and of the rebuild, only play 13 minutes so far in the season. We're 2-1. They're looking good, and your leading point guard hasn't played. I think they're going in a great direction this season.
Yeah, great direction. And you don't have your ideal backup point guard yet with Ricky Rubio. We're still waiting until December with him for the torn ACL. I think
right. So your top two point guards aren't playing.
Yeah, and there's somebody else I'm missing too, I think. But yeah, and they've shown that you always talk about with teams, especially come playoff time, Alec. I know it's rotation short, but you always want to have strength in numbers, and I think they really do have that. We didn't talk much about them in the offseason, but I like the addition of Robin Lopez. I think he's played good so far. I think 10 points the other night in that Wizards game. So they're getting production, and I like it.
I must say as well, shout out to our former Cavs out there with Sexton and Markkanen out in Utah. They're off to a 3-1 start as well. And, the fire sale was on over there. I would say for what they got out of Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert, the fact that they're still winning games, we'll see how long it lasts for. But I think if you're a fan over there, you have to be pleased. And you look over and I look at this roster and I go, all right, I'm seeing a bunch of Eastern Conference players. And Lauri Markkanen, Kelly Olynyk was Boston quite a few years ago at this point. Jordan Clarkson with Cleveland.
Yep.
And obviously Colin Sexton.
A lot of Cavs.
Right, a lot of Cavs in there. A lot of Cavs and a lot of Boston in that Utah team. And for them to kind of get all that from two players, I'd have to say they are managing that rebuild very quickly and very well. And we'll see if Colin Sexton can be the rebuild master over there and get his second one.
Well, you know what? I'm thinking with all these draft picks they got from the Cavs and the Timberwolves in those two trades, they probably don't want the season to go the way it's going because 3-1 so far. I like their roster. They got another Cav you forgot was Abaji, which they got in draft.
Oh, yeah.
I kind of want to see how he was. Nikhil Alexander-Walker, I liked him too. He's a good young player. I'm just gonna run through these guys that are names that people know. Malik Beasley, Jordan Clarkson, like you said, Conley, Rudy Gay. People forgot to pick him up. Taylor Horton Tucker forgot they got him from the Lakers. So they have a good roster. And I thought when they made that trade with the Cavs, I'm thinking, hey, this isn't gonna be a long rebuild for the Jazz.
Yeah, I'm trying to see if Agbaji's played at all. It doesn't look like it.
Yeah, I last night I was looking too. I don't think he played last night, but still,
He played 1 minute against the Nuggets.
Yeah,
he got the garbage time.
Yeah, well, we'll see with a young team where he can find his niche, but you got to be happy right now for them.
Yeah, but I'm a lot happier for the Cavs. And I must say, when they released the uniforms earlier in the offseason, I did not like it. The pictures looked awful. They were so bland. They were so ugly. There was nothing to them. Having seen the white jerseys and the black jerseys both on the floor now, sick. I love it. It is so clean looking. And I love it when they're playing at home with the white jerseys. And, it's just this all white everything look. And it's so clean and crisp. I love to see these new jerseys.
I just wish that there was like a trim like on the collar and on the, like, you know what I mean? That's the only thing I feel like it's missing. But like you said, sometimes more bad.
It feels so clean. And something about that I like. It doesn't need to be flashy. And I feel like that describes this Cavs team. They don't need to be flashy.
Right.
And I feel like it's a fit for this generation of Cleveland.
Well, I feel like, especially because we haven't seen them in regular season yet, but I saw them in the preseason. I do like the wine-colored ones. Those are probably my favorite ones.
Okay. One thing I would have liked to see, though, with the Cavs jersey, since everyone's wearing the black patch with number 6 on it, we're on the V where the ball is going into the hoop on the Cavs. I wish they would have put that there because there's
been a cool touch.
Patches like right here on the shoulder. You got the Cliffs, something else Nike. Over here than the Nike and then the 6. It's like there's too much here and there's like it's so clean and pristine. Then you just get this big black 6 on there. I'm like, put that where the ball was. It would have fit perfectly and it would have been sick.
Yeah, I'm just not sold on the black ones. I don't know why. I just can't get behind them. They look, not that they don't look bad. I just don't.
I like them better than most of the other black ones they've tried to do.
I just don't really like the black. To me, it's just I know they've had it a little bit throughout their history, but it's just not the Cavs color.
Like, but Mike, they won a championship in black.
That's the only reason.
Color now, yeah.
That from that and when they had black, when they had Sean Kemp with the ugly. I thought they were ugly, but everybody likes them now. But you know what I'm talking about with the powder blue and
the 90s designs.
Yeah, with the weird swish going around the shirt. That was their worst that they had, in my opinion.
Don't tell my mom; she'll fight you on that one.
Everybody likes him now, but my dad said back then when they had him, everybody hated him. But I guess our generation likes him.
Well, why don't we burn 10 minutes on Cavs talk? We'll talk about him later in the season, I'm sure.
Yep.
Let's bring it back around local. Head to some of our high school football games from this past Friday. We'll start out, or actually, I'll tell you where we finished out yesterday. We finished talking about the Fitch Harding game and talked about what did we do? 18 games yesterday, so not too many for today. Finished off with that one. Next one up, though, is Wellsville and Leetonia. Wellsville finishes off the season at 4-6 and finishes off Leetonia's rebuild starting campaign at 0-10. It wasn't a game anyone expected Leetonia to be in or compete in really at all. So I would say Wellsville, they came in, they managed business, and they finished out the season with a win, which ultimately, Mike, is what every team wants to do. They didn't quite put themselves in the postseason hunt. They finished just outside at 18, so they were close. In my opinion, though, they did everything they could have down the stretch. The likelihood they were going to get a win against Southern United or Valley Christian was almost zero. They almost upset Valley. You wish, if you're one of their fans, they could have done something against Lisbon, but you look at the rest of the season. I mean, Brutal, Toronto, Edison, Southern, United, Valley Christian, and Lisbon, all playoff teams. Their losses were all playoff teams and not low-seeded ones outside of Lisbon. I think Lisbon is the only one that, out of that list, that is lower than, or that isn't playing in a home game in the postseason.
Well, that's what I was going to say. I think, after starting 0-2 and then you bounce back to win 3 in a row, then it puts you at 3-2. I think, again, this tough schedule with Southern and United and Valley Christian, that's not really their fault. And like you said, they did hang in Valley Christian, but that Lisbon one's probably one they could have got because, like you said, Lisbon
finished 12 seed. So that's the worst loss in their schedule is a 12 seed.
Right, and I know Lisbon's in the tournament now, but they're 5-5, and we were talking especially last couple weeks that we had our own questions marks about them, and that was around the time frame of that game. So I think that was one that they probably needed to get, and maybe things could have been different. But I think, like you said, when closing things out, I know it's against Letonia, but closing things out with a win, everybody wants to do that.
They did, and like we were just talking about, it was a very hard season. And like we've said for so many others, especially Louisville, you hand most anybody this schedule and they are not going through it with more than 6 wins. If you're going to be hard pressed to find a team that could beat Southern United, Valley Christian, Edison, and Toronto. I mean, there's 5.
Or at least try to win one of those.
Right. I mean, that's 5 really good games that you have to go in and play. Not to mention, you're not getting breaks. You went Toronto and Edison to start the season, 2 teams that had unbelievably hot starts. And then you did get your break. You had Catholic Central out of Steubenville, Columbiana, EP. You had 3 weeks off. And then you had to go down into Salineville, into the Wigwam, and go up against an opponent that you had no idea was going to be as dominant as they were going into week 5. I mean, you knew they were good. It was going to be a good team this season, but nobody expected them to beat up on Wellsville 64-6 in that game. And then finding confidence after a game like that is just nearly impossible when you're going up against good teams every week. I think the Lisbon game really was just bad timing coming off of that Southern matchup. If that Southern game happens after Lisbon, I think they could have beaten Lisbon and maybe have been in the postseason.
Or if that was moved up to where they had that winning streak, that could have been a different story. But I think the timing of that game, like you said, was bad. And it was just 2 more tough teams after that. It really wasn't, they played the games. Those blowouts do take a toll on you. With 64-6 and then 41-8, those take tolls on you.
The fact that they kept fighting after 64-6, 57-20,
in that Valley Christian game,
41-8, and then they held it to Valley Christian until the very end.
Yeah.
I mean, I think they were winning that game going into the final quarter. And Valley Christian, just once again, they're showing that they got some clutch genes in their blood over there, and they pull out yet another gritty win in the fourth quarter. Twice here in the last 4 weeks, they've had to do that. So you have to give a lot of respect to Wellsville for, fighting all the way to the end. They gave themselves the best opportunity in every chance to make this postseason. They got very close, just missing out. But I think, with the direction this team is going, I think they're going to be in a spot next year where we have to look at them probably next to Lisbon here in the EOAC. Maybe not cracking that top 3 yet, but getting up there because they have had a lot of 5-5 seasons. But I think this was a very promising one for this group.
Yeah, they're on the up and up. And I don't know what category, like you said, but I think you're in position where the only bad thing about their season, how it went, is that you feel like if that Lisbon game was placed anywhere else, or if they were more, didn't have that blowout the game before that, they could have probably won that. And the 4-point loss to Valley Christian, this could have been a 6-4 team instead of 4-6. And I don't think to end a year, you don't want to be like, oh, if we would have had this game or we would have made this play, that's the worst feeling to have because you can't go back and change it. And I think that's kind of where Wellsville's at.
Yeah, they're kind of they're definitely in a look back moment right here. But a team that is going to continue looking to the future, Letonia. Obviously, a winless year this year is not what they were hoping for, bringing in a new coach. But talking to them early in the year, they weren't afraid of the 0-10. It's not impacting any contracts. No one's getting fired because of this season. He said, to me when they played Valley Christian. Look, I'm not sugarcoating it. We aren't going to beat Valley Christian when I was calling that game a couple weeks ago, actually over a month ago. We are tearing this thing down to the ground, and we are completely restarting. We are going out trying to find any player in this school system or in this region that, wants to come be a part of this, tearing everything down. It's a completely fresh restart. That's why they brought in Proto Papa as the head coach. They're hoping that, his long tenure in high school football. I mean, the dude's been coaching since the early 2000s. He is no new product to this area. They're hoping he can kind of lead the charge, and whether or not he's the guy that finishes it out, they just need somebody to start that push back towards success.
just to get something going here, because I while you're saying that, I was kind of looking the season they had. They only scored 25 points on the whole year. 25 points. I mean, that's just not.
33.
Did I add it up wrong? Maybe miss a game, but
I don't think you added in the Wellsville score.
oh, that's right. Yeah, I did. I missed that one. It was, yeah, okay. So, okay, whatever. It's still not good.
Okay.
But it's only you can only go up from here. And I think what you said to start the year kind of is the way I kind of look at things sometimes with rebuilding teams. Not being afraid to say that we're not gonna have a good year, and we know that. We don't want it to be that way, but it's gonna happen. And going 0-10 versus winning that last game, possibly going to 1-9, what's the difference? It's not a good season, regardless if you have that one win in the column. I know you won it just for pride reasons, but it's just like in baseball. Like if you lose 99 games instead of 100, what's the big deal if it's 100 losses? It's still one more. So I think the only way to go up is from here for them. So I mean, just next year they got to bounce back in a way to try to get a couple wins on this guy, and we'll look better offensively, and try to stop some teams from scoring so much on them.
Yeah, Mike, and this isn't a group that's not used to the rebuild. They had a series of 1-9 seasons that spanned from 2014 to 2016. Those 3 seasons, they had just 3 wins. They didn't win any games in conference. In 2017, they go 0-10, bring in a new coach. They go 4-6 first year there. Second year, 6-4. They go 3-1 in the conference. And then in 2020, they go 7-2, a 3-1 conference record. And they do make the playoffs. They win a playoff game at home against Buckeye Central. Then they lose to McDonald. And then they graduate a lot of guys, fall to 2-5 during the COVID season. And now they bring in another new head coach to kind of get this phase restarted. And it's just one of those processes. You know, in high school, it's so much about who you have and when you have them, because you could have 20 great players in 20 great years, but if you don't have them all in, you know, that 2-3 year gap that you need them, it does nothing for you. And so they're kind of in that phase right now. I know the Daily Boys are pretty good. They're big impact players over there for Latonia. And if you can put some pieces over, if you can find some young freshmen and sophomores, I mean, I think 4 of the offensive linemen in the game I called were freshmen or sophomores. So it's a very young team over there, and they're 100% in the rebuild process of, you know, getting anybody that can play in there to play, just to get some experience for these guys and give them opportunities throughout the next 2, 3, 4 seasons to get something going in Latonia, much like the last time they were down. You get this kind of 4-year process started. Hey, you're going to get a lot of opportunities to start if you want to play. And eventually it does culminate in success, but it's a very slow process. What they missed out last time was COVID hit and the consistency fell off. Hopefully we don't see anything like that again. And if they can get back to the mountaintop, they can flatten that piece off so it's not a peak anymore.
Well, you just need, like you said, to get some guys there that are a group of young, talented guys at the same time, because it's not like in college and high school, it's hard because every year or two, things are changing. It's not like in pro sports where you have, we're going to draft these couple guys, we're going to give them a couple years of gel together. You don't have that time in football. So it's just about a time of them getting, the coaching right now, it's still young, it's different. So it's all about getting a young core that they can try to start winning with in the next year or two.
I agree. Next game up, it was a good one. Really good one. Beaver Local and Wheeling Central Catholic ends in a 2-score game. Beaver Local continues just what has been a phenomenal season. They finish off 8-2 with 466 points scored on the season, only 166 against. They lose just once while playing at home this year. It was really a great season for Beaver Local, and now they look towards the playoffs, and they're going to have Coventry in the first round. It's a home game for them. The Beavs are starting. Pardon me here. Beavs are going to be a 2 seed. They're sitting right behind West Branch, so they finished out in a really good spot with Coventry coming in, and it's a nice program over in Coventry. Obviously, a down year in the Akron region. They're going to play them tough. Going to be interesting. Coventry hasn't lost by a blowout in the majority of their games. So it's going to be a hard test coming up. And obviously, we'll talk about that Thursday or Friday. But to see Beaver Local finish out the season the way they did, there was question marks end of the year because, their hardest game, they had lost to Salem. And they got some easy games with, East Liverpool, Oak Glen, and Linda McKinley, Geezer. And it was kind of this like, all right, what do you have? They go in, they beat Harrison Central on the road big. Obviously, another easy win against Indian Creek. But then you take on what time was, I think, a one loss for an undefeated John Hay, and you whip them. I mean, they just absolutely clapped them. And then you get Wheeling Central Catholic the following week, and you once again put in just a great performance at home. This is a Beaver team that I don't think anybody should be wanting to go into that stadium here in the postseason because I don't think they're going to be faring too well.
Well, it's tough to kind of point out teams that you matchup wise that you'd be like, hey, I'd rather play them than them. But I think Beaver Local is one of those teams, like you're saying, you don't probably want to see because not having lost since week 2 in the games, again, competition or not, whatever you want to look at it, it's still ripping off 8 in a row and the scores that they've done it by 2. So I think it's all about going to the playoffs hot. They're going into it hot. You just kind of worry about maybe they might be riding that momentum too high, but they haven't shown that these last few weeks that they've been on this roll. So they're clicking right now on the side of them.
They really are. And you look at the bracket coming, it should be a good opportunity for 2 wins at a minimum in the postseason. Obviously, both home games, one against a 15-seeded Coventry. Round 2 will either be a 7-3 Canton South or 6-4 Salem. Obviously, the Salem matchup, Salem's the only team to go in and beat Beaver at home this season. So there is some question marks in there on whether or not a rematch would go towards the Beavers in this game. So I think it's interesting to continue to watch. I am curious to see which way this team goes in the postseason because they had some good wins at the end of the year. But you just wonder, are these wins against teams that were actually good, or were they against teams that, had pretender schedules like John Hay? Because a lot of people came out of that game going, hey, John Hay is not that good. They get shut out by Glenville the following week. I think they're going to get dominated by St. V in the first round of the playoffs. And they hadn't had a game against a winning team at that point in the year outside of Scott, and they lost. So it was a game there that definitely had question marks. And, you still kind of have to wonder, what is this Beaver team really made of going into this postseason? I like the round 1 matchup. Round 2, though, is definitely going to be one to watch for this team. But if they can get past Canton South or Salem, they have a date with Girard, Hubbard, Jefferson, or Poland. This is the NE8 bracket, basically, to have to go through. And it's not an easy one because, Mike, we've seen how competitive this NE8 has been just all season long. It has been one of, if not the best conference to watch week in and week out, and one of the most competitive that you just don't know who was going to come out with a victory.
And I think it's deep too because it's you saw games that
2 teams with a losing record.
Yeah, you saw games over the course of the last few weeks that a team that's good going up a team that's not really playing that well this year, and they were somehow close games. So it's just the depth of it and the quality of play. It's pretty good.
Yeah, I was looking here. I mean, they have 7 teams in the playoffs, I believe.
Sounds about right.
Yeah,
I mean, just this past week,
7. So
just this past week, Gerard played Niles. It was a close game, and Niles we know they were having a down year. So
Niles didn't make the postseason. It was still close. Granted, Mike, I'm discounting that a little bit. Gerard is only your 3rd string quarterback at the moment. So
I agree, but it's different. It's been different since the first few weeks. We understand that.
Yeah, injuries are really going to kill them this postseason. I don't think, unfortunately, I don't think they get out of the first round.
I kind of think you're right.
Quarterback struggles, a second matchup against Hubbard, it becomes very, very difficult. They had an outstanding performance from Stephen Sims in that game, getting, I think, 5 to 7 touchdowns. I don't remember the exact number anymore. A couple of weeks ago at this point, I've had a lot of numbers in my head since then, but he puts in a legendary performance. He's their backup quarterback. He goes down against Struthers, and they lose that game in the second half. So it's going to be very, very difficult, in my opinion, for Girard to go out here and make a run. They have the defense to do it. We know that. But at some point, you have to have offense. And especially when you're going up against any 8 teams, which they're going to have to see basically the first 2 weeks of this postseason, and really first 3, maybe even 4, depending. I mean, if Struthers can pull off an upset against West Branch in the second round and beat Woodridge or Canal Fulton's Northwest, I mean, you could have an NE8 regional championship, and it's likely that you're going to have an NE8 team playing in a regional championship game on this side of the bracket. And not to mention South Range in a completely different bracket is likely going to be in a regional championship.
Yep.
Next game up here, speaking of NE8 teams and keeping it in this same bracket, it's Jefferson, who finished out the year strong after the losses to Struthers and South Range and Girard earlier in the year, yes. But they finish out back-to-back times on the road. They go into Poland, win by 2 touchdowns. Then a week ago, or this past Friday, not a week ago, they go into Cortland and beat the Bulldogs 27-7. Now they have to rematch against Poland, but now they're the home team going into this Friday. But Mike, I just have to point out the way they finished off this season, I would say it was a strong ending. Maybe not as strong as their start, though, because this was an offense that everyone was looking at that they were going to be lethal after, first 3 weeks, over 130, 140 points, and they've had that as a total since then. So a very strong start to the year for Jefferson, a bit of a down ending, but going 2-2 in your last 4 games. And with the 2 wins coming the last 2, I like the momentum they've set themselves up with to go into the end of the year. Yeah,
momentum. And I just said with a couple other teams that we just talked about, it's being hot going into the playoffs. And at least you got that on your side. And this one they got home too against a Poland team that, they had a solid year at 5-5. But like you said, Jefferson has that ability to score, but they haven't done that in a while. And if they can get that going here, especially after these last 2 wins, whatever against Poland or Lakeview, and that's the other thing too. Like you pointed out, you're playing a team you just played 2 weeks ago. So at your place again, or actually it's at your place. The other one was in Poland. So try to get things going here on offense too. We know this is a strong team. We know they can do it. Try to get this going in the playoffs, because if you can get it going in the first round, carry momentum, who knows how far they can go.
Yeah, and I think that's a big part of it right now when you look at both of these teams in reality, both Jefferson and Poland, who they're going to face. You look at it, and around 2, you're either going to have a beat-up Girard, who will not have Bengala back for the season. He's done. It was going to be a beat-up Girard who's missing their starting quarterback. A Hubbard, who Jefferson has already beat this year. And you like that matchup. You already beat Poland. Regional semifinal, you either get Beaver, Coventry, Canton South, or Salem. And I think if you're Jefferson, I think you're okay with that. They have, I'll say, a relatively easy as it can get for the postseason of a line to a regional championship game.
That just goes to what I just said. If you got that road, try to get things going here and see where it takes you.
Right. The path is clear. It's just a matter really for this Jefferson team of avoiding the letdowns and maybe pulling off 1 or 2 epic performances. Obviously, that regional semifinal, or perhaps even these district finals against Girard or Hubbard. I mean, it's not going to be easy for any of these teams down here, but you can kind of draw a clear line for everyone because, hey, these teams can go out there and they've beaten each other all season long. So I don't think we count anybody out yet. I mean, I don't even count out Hubbard right now or Poland. And both teams are kind of around 500. So it's obviously been a very good run for this NE8 conference.
And it's the playoffs. I know we pick favorites and everything, but it's hard to count anybody out. It's playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, to get here, you had to do a lot. There was, specifically in this region, 25 teams hunting to get into these spots. Yeah. So, yeah, it's a spot that you had to really work to get into. Or actually 26, it looks like. Either way. But on the side of Lakeview, a rough season comes to an end. A promising start, with wins over LeBray and Niles and Liberty, and you keep it within 10 points of Garfield. And then you get into the deep NE8 play against Girard, Struthers, Hubbard, Poland, and South Range and Jefferson, and it all just comes crashing down. I mean, it was such a promising start with, what's this now? 76 points in the first, 84 points in the first 4 weeks, and then just 15 in the final 6. What a complete turnaround of this season once they hit conference play.
And only this, I think we talked about it a couple times, but it's worth pointing out again, only a 10-point loss to Garfield, and a Liberty team that we're looking at pretty differently now that they beat. Now,
in the postseason 16 seed, South Range upset, here it comes.
Let's see it.
What a story that would be, man.
Yeah.
Number 16 Liberty, just scratching into the postseason after a Week 10 loss to Garfield, pulls up the biggest upset in the history of OHSAA football to take down the South Range Raiders. Oh, my God. Mike, if that was to happen, I think DJ Oakley would be having a stroke in the booth.
I think all of YSN would be having a very bad week if that happened. But
I would probably be celebrating a little bit.
That's what I was going to say. How is it hard to not root for? I mean, I love me some South Range too, but like we've been talking with Liberty the last.
I live in Liberty, so what can I say? I want the victory.
Exactly, and you have close. You follow Liberty a lot. You called a lot, and it's just how would you not kind of like to see that happen?
Mike, they've only lost once since I called them about a month ago.
There you go.
They're 4-1 since I called them. So
you're the good luck charm.
Apparently, hey, their girls' basketball team wins their first district championship in school history when I call their season. So
you called some volleyball too, haven't you?
Yeah, they didn't do as great there, so maybe not.
Well, you can't win them all, but
I know
you're doing pretty well.
I would say right now my numbers are looking up with Liberty Sports.
They got to keep you around, man.
Hey, man, all I know is that this girls' basketball team in Liberty this year. Their eyes are set on a state championship, and I think they can get there.
Well, when you walk into the gym for their basketball games or to the press box or the football games, they're probably, oh man, Alex here, we're gonna have a good day.
I hope so. At this point, when I show up and they win their first game of the season, they don't lose again. I'm kind of thinking, man, maybe I need to go back there and help them to a playoff run.
Yeah, there you go.
Either way, Bulldogs. A bit of a disappointing ending here with Lakeview, and they were in that playoff hunt till this final week. If they had gotten a win, there was a chance. But speaking of Liberty, their loss helped Liberty get in. Same with Champion going down to Brookfield. Lakeview finished 8-19. Champion was 18. Chagrin Falls was 17. And somehow Liberty gets in at 16. So despite the win over Liberty earlier this year from Lakeview, the back half of their season really hurt their opportunity at the playoffs. If you win one of these games, and they had an opportunity, if you had gone out and beaten Poland, likelihood is, you would have gotten into the postseason if you're Lakeview. That was 9-0. So if their offense had found anything in that game, which might have been one of the first weeks it got cold, and you saw the points really drop off, they didn't. They scored twice since that temperature has dropped. So we'll see kind of how they bounce back next season. They're not a bad team by any stretch. They just went in and played in a very difficult conference this year.
And that was a tough stretch too. Those last 5 games, or actually last 6 games, all the ones they lost. So tough stretch. Hopefully, hope for a better schedule next year.
Hopefully that they can just be right back and give themselves an opportunity in this conference, because it's going to be another hard year next year, I think. Maybe see a little regression from South Range, and it'll open the door maybe for one team, if they have a really good year, to pull off an upset and steal the conference from this time around, because it's been a dominant stretch for those Raiders.
Yeah.
Next up, East Liverpool, the Potters. They finish out the season with a loss after beating Oak Glen the week prior. They lose to Ware 27-7 at home. And again, kind of a disappointing finish after the great start for this team against Minerva. 44-7, and then you look at the season total. If you take away the 2 wins that they put together, 88 points, and you just look at the other 8 games on the schedule, they only scored 54 points outside of their wins. And obviously, it wasn't an easy year, but there are some games I think you look back on and you go, hey, you had an opportunity here. You lost this game. It wasn't a matter if they beat you. Going up against Indian Creek in week 2, Indian Creek is a team that finished off 1-9. That's one of those games you really look back on and you go, we should have had that in week 2. You excuse games like Salem and Beaver and Harrison Central and Edison, even Canton Central Catholic. You excuse those kind of games. But getting shut out to 2-8 NDCL 46-0, that's one of those you look back and you just go, that's inexcusable this season. This was not a terrible Potters team that should have had games like that. So I don't mean to be the guy up on a fruit box screaming at this team, pointing out flaws, but I definitely think there were some games on this schedule that even if they didn't win, they should have played better then, because I don't think that they were as bad as a 2-8 record suggests. Obviously, they weren't great, and by no stretch did I think they were going to, take this conference. But I still thought it was a year that, hey, I think they should have done something a little bit more than 2-8 and just, 52 points outside of their 2 wins.
And I said
that's the part that I don't like is how do you only score, 52 points in 8 losses, but you put up 88 in 2 wins. That is, I think, a big part of that falls back on coaching. How do you have this big of a disparity between your wins and losses?
Well, and the theme of that is looking back at the schedule. What I said with some other teams today, that's the worst feeling to have when you think, oh, we could have got this one, maybe had a different stretch here. I know we played tough teams, but maybe we could have felt better going into those. That's the worst thing to have. And I think they aren't really – I don't think what they have is a 2-8 team, but at the end of the day, Alex, your record is what you show you. It is what you say you are. So –
in 5 years down the line, no one remembers, oh, it was a close game. They were better than that record. 5 years down the line, even people look back in the record books, they see a 2-8 season, they go, oh,
bad year.
That's a bad year. And that's unfortunately what it gets remembered as. And I think it should just become fuel next year for this Potters program to come out and put together something around 500. No one is saying you have to go out against those teams and win your conference, make a deep playoff run. But how about shoot for the playoffs? Shoot for that 16 seed next year. That's ultimately the goal, is to make it to the postseason for most of these teams. And to not do it, that's obviously a disappointment for coaches, for players, for fans. Everybody wants to get there. And now it's just a matter of how do you take what you learned this year and take it to the offseason?
That's all it's about at this point. I mean, how do you always have that year, there's optimism going into it. Hey, let's make a run. Doesn't happen. How do you rebound this offseason? Get guys in the weight room, get them focused, get them looking over the game plans or the playbooks, whatever you got them to do. How are you going to do that?
Yeah. Next one up here to talk about Waterloo and Lowellville. This go the way of the Vills 34-7. And I feel for Western Reserve this year because everyone has kind of been in agreement that this is a 3-7 football team that is a lot better than a 3-7 football team should be. And again, it's one of those schedules you look back on and you go, they should have had this. They should have had that. And especially Conneaut. I mean, it was a very winnable game in week 2. And you see Conneaut finished 8-2. So clearly there is something there with this Western Reserve team. I mean, they go win that game. Sure, they still lose to Brookfield. A 1-point loss to Jackson Milton. Okay, Jackson Milton's in the playoffs. I think they're a 12 or a 13 seed around there. That's winnable game. They catch Waterloo during Waterloo's only winning streak of the year, and it's a 3-point game that they lose. So again, it's just you go back and there are so many what ifs or close games this season for Western Reserve that we talked about with all these other teams that you wish you could go back and redo, because this is a Western Reserve team that I think was so close to where they ultimately wanted to be and where they really should have been at this point in the season. And they just missed out on the playoffs at 3-7. They're still a 19 seed, just sitting behind Wellsville, East Canton, Fairport. Harding was the one that got in. So getting 2 of those wins, it really is 5 points on this season. And this is a playoff team. They were that close. And, you can just really go back and just add this up between, the 3 almost losses. It's a touchdown. There's a touchdown that separates 3-7 Western Reserve not being a postseason that's considered to be a down year from being a 5-5 team in the postseason that right now would likely be probably sitting next to Lisbon at 12, 11, 13, somewhere in that margin.
And for the coaches that are coming back next season and the players that are going to be back, I would use what you just said and looking at their schedule as motivation. Like, we were that close. Outside of a Brookfield team that we talk about them, we talk them up all the time, rightfully so. Same with Winter Ridge, they've had a really good year this year. But outside of that, and then Springfield won too, but they had a down year. That's probably a winnable game. I know they bounced back, but at that point, that's still a winnable game if things are different. So if I'm looking at that, I'm thinking, man, put this on your wall in your locker room the whole offseason. Think that we're this close and we beat some of these teams we're playing right now.
Yeah, I think that's a big one. Personally, on the edge of that locker room, right above the doorway, I'm putting Detroit on the wall. And I say that because 313 is the area code for Detroit. And that's the margin you lost those 3 games by. 3, 1, and 3. Put Detroit on that. There's your reminder. Hey, we were that close. We were a really awful city away.
Yeah.
We don't want to be Detroit. Be better than Detroit and you're in the playoffs, which is just every NFL team's motto as well. So it's a good mindset to have.
There you go.
Any chance to rip into that city up north. But on the side here with Lowville,
I'll let you do that.
What an epic finish it was for this team. Their first undefeated season in over 20 years, first conference title, I think, in the decade. So it was a phenomenal finish for this team. Obviously, I would have liked to see Vinny get a bit more in the touchdown department. I think he threw for 2 in this game. But like I said, leading into it, he is going to finish top 10 and top 20 and he's on every record list at the end of this year. So whether or not he did or didn't make it into the top 10 as some that he was on pace for early in the year doesn't matter to me. I don't think it matters much to him. What matters to this team at this point is the rest of the season, because this is a group that truly believes they can make this a state run. And I think there's one team that stands in their path, and it's Warren JFK. And the soonest they see them is a regional final. And this Lowville team will be ready to go by then. They have Steubenville Central Catholic in week 1, likely Toronto or Lucas in week 2. Dubs for both of those by running clocks. Week 3, likelihood is they have Danville, and there's the test. There's the test for this team. They'd have to go up against Danville and likely JFK in back-to-back weeks to make it into that Final Four. But if anyone is going to do it, it is this team. And I would go out to say this might be the single most talented Division 7 team in the history of the state of Ohio. I mean, you just look at this entire group, and you have weapons at every skill position that would start, if not lead, most other teams in the region. And I think when you have that culmination of talent with not just a star, but a superstar quarterback in Vinny Ballone, who I know hasn't really received many of the offers that I think we all believe he deserves, but a deep playoff run with this Ville team and perhaps upsetting Warren JFK and Danville, going to a state championship game. Not only is it going to put Vinny Ballone on the map and cement this as an all-time season for the Rockets, but I think it sends a lot of these kids far past the Division 3 and Division 2 level that they're going to be on since they played down in Division 7. There are talents on this roster in Lucente and specifically Brady Bunofsky that should be playing at the FBS level alongside Vinny Ballone. That's truly where I believe these talents belong, whether in the MAC or, in the American. I don't know about Big Ten and those kind of conferences, Power 5, but there are definitely roster spots that should belong to a lot of these kids on these rosters in the FBS, and I will stand by that. I'm going to stand by these Rockets as far as they go. I truly believe this is a historic roster, historic crew, and one of the best teams Division 7 has ever seen, and the best team the Rockets have ever seen.
That's what I was just going to say. I don't know too much about the history of their program, but for this to not be one of the best, if not the best seasons they've had, talent, what they got on their roster, first of all, what they've done for these 10 weeks, it's been dominant. And Vinny Vaughn only getting 2, didn't get the record, whatever. I've said this with the teams that had bad years, that we didn't need them to lose 10 games or 9 games for him. We knew they were bad. We don't need Vinny Vaughn to throw it. Again, I wanted to see it happen, but we don't need that to happen to know he's had a great year, and this team's had a great year. So I'm expecting big things from him in the playoffs, and it's going to be fun to watch him.
Yeah, and, Vinny Balone, he's making headlines. I mean, more than 2,600 yards, 44 touchdowns, 46 now, I think, on the year with almost 3,000 yards. And the kid hasn't thrown an interception. He has 3 or 4 as a defensive back.
Yeah.
And he might be, for whatever reason, he is not on, 24/7 recruiting. He is not a 3-star, 4-star athlete. If any other person in the state outside of Division 7 puts up numbers like Balone, they are on national radar. Yep. I mean, they are being looked at. This is a kid top 10 in the nation in passer rating. I know at one point he was number 1, but the fact that this kid is not getting talked about at the level he deserves completely baffles me. And I think even here at YSN, maybe we're a little too quiet about him. This Louisville team is one of those groups. I know they just got a big old special the other night on YSN. I think it was last week. But to have a kid like this, I mean, we need to find a way to get this kid some more notoriety, because not just him, but this entire team deserves all the praise in the world. And because of where they're located and, where this region is, I mean, it's the best kept secret in the Mahoning Valley is their slogan. Unfortunately, it being the best kept secret makes Balone the best kept secret in the best kept secret. So, I mean, it's one of those seasons for Louisville that I don't think anyone is soon going to forget.
And if for anybody that's not giving them as much talk that they deserve, let's see it happen in the playoffs.
That's been their criticism. They always fall short in the postseason.
Well, I didn't mean it that way. I mean, show those people like we've had a great year. We've been doing this all year. You're just realizing it now in the playoffs. We've done this all year, so you should have paid attention.
Day one, baby. We've been here on the whole way touting the Rockets.
That's it.
Yep. All right. Going on again here. A team that could potentially match up against Louisville at some point in the postseason. Jackson Milton, they finish off the year with a big win over McDonald, 20-7, coming off of a loss to Springfield. It doesn't get easy here in the first round. They're going to take on Dalton. Not a matchup I like for them. And, as my opinion has been all season long, Jackson Milton is an average football team with an easier schedule than a lot of other teams, and it helped them to where they are, but obviously it hurt their playoff ranking ultimately because they did not get a very good seed. For being a 7-3 team, there are 5-5 groups ahead of them. So for this team, it's one you watch out for as a potential early exit, and we'll see how they go.
Yeah, potential for an early exit, but for people like you just pointed out yourself, saying they're average, like I just said with Louisville, go out and show them that you're not.
And pardon me, they're in Division 6, not Division 7. I got Danville and Dalton confused.
You're good. But again, this is for anybody that finished the year good or average or not so good, and you're in the playoffs, and people have question marks of you going in. This is the time. This is what you wait for all year, and this is the time to put up or shut up. Show people that we're deserved where we're at, and we're gonna make a run. So it's time to go out and prove it.
Yeah, this is one of those teams, though, that, we talk about like Western Reserve and a couple other teams we mentioned that are blank in my brain right now, where you look back and you go, we should have won that game.
Yep.
This is the team that did win that game. That was close. 7-0 to Waterloo, 22-21 over Western Reserve, 16-14 over Newton Falls. So as much as I criticize and I say they're average, they are the team that in the close games, they won. When they were ultimately outmatched in Louisville Ridge and Springfield, they lost, which is what worries me against Dalton in round one. I don't think they had the firepower. I mean, if they were starting out against, anyone else, I probably would like them a little bit better. But I think this Division 6 region pretty competitive. But, for being a 7-3 team, if they had the start against, I'd say Middlefield Cardinal, who's 5-5, I think I like Jackson Milton a lot better in round one. So I think that's a matchup that I don't favor Jackson Milton in why I think they're going to have such an early exit, because they can win those close games and they can beat teams that aren't as good as them. But when we've seen them go up against teams that I'll say have a better record than them, maybe not even better than them, just have a better record than them, they have been dominated. I mean, they have combined 14 points in the last 2 games. They had 20 against Louisville. That's when Louisville put up 62. So it's one of those performances I look at with Jackson Milton that I go, all right, you won the games you were supposed to win. What are you going to do against a team that is on your level? It might be right above it with this Dalton crew. And that's what worries me about Jackson Milton this offseason or this postseason.
Yeah, won the game they're supposed to win, which they did. Didn't win the games that they could have won that were against better teams, but it's a whole new season here. So,
yeah,
let's see what they can do.
0-0. That's the record now.
That's it.
Starting fresh. All right, McDonald, they finish off 3-7 after this loss to Jackson Milton. You know, it was not a year I think anyone expected to kind of be this down. I think we've all been waiting for McDonald to hit their stride again, because it feels like this is normally a better program, but they've been kind of on a skid as of late, and they had such a good run of putting some talented players out there on the field. Really, you go all the way back. I'm telling this to shoot. I'm trying to see their last losing season, and I got 2004. Since kind of this collapse due to COVID in 2021, they go 3-6, now 3-7. But before that, it was 2004 that this McDonald program has had, these down years. So it's been a really good stretch for them. And obviously you do have these ups and downs in high school football. We'll see where they go after this. But I think it's a group that you're just kind of waiting for them to bounce back.
They're not going to be down that long.
No.
I think like you just said, they're not going to be down that long. This is a program that's like going back to what the records. It's not a program that has these type of years. So they're not familiar with this. I know that they're not happy with it. Nobody likes losing, obviously, but they're not going to be down too long. They don't have stretches like this often.
Next game, and this one was not even close. 55-0. The Tigers send the Trojans packing for the final time in school history. Trojans program ends on a shutout loss, and it was a disappointing finish to this season for Sebring. I would have liked to see them score at least once, but the end of 11-man football has come to a close. Shout out to this group for going out and fighting for 10 weeks out of the year. They could have folded after week 3 or 4. I mean, there was talk all around. Hey, we might not see some programs make it to the end of the year. This was one of them. And, good on them for going out and fighting, whether, they were handing teams easy wins, whatever it may be. They could have folded. They went out there and they fought and they gave themselves a fighting chance to the very end. And I have to respect that. Unfortunately, it just wasn't going to be their year. It never was. And you hope as they move into 7-man football, perhaps they can find some talent down the line and eventually come back to 11-man football and be competitive, because that's all you want to see out of this group out down there in McKinley.
And that's all you want to see. And I think, having this last game with 11-man football, when we were previewing this game last week, I didn't think that. I think it was going to be a rough game for them, because mindset-wise, I know you think about it all year when you're going through these games, you're losing. But when it comes down the stretch, when you don't score a point your last 2 weeks, that's when it starts to kick in. Like, hey, this is the end, and that just wasn't the right. It just wasn't going to happen for them, because it just was the right. It's hard to lose a program. It's that type of football. It's hard when there's no future. It's just this is it.
Well, Mike, how about them Tigers? Springfield turns it around after an 0-4 start, winning their last 6. Not only do they make it to the postseason, they have a home playoff game in the postseason. However, they have to take on the feisty Matthews Mustangs in the first round, which to me, that's going to be one heck of a matchup in must-see football to see if Springfield can keep that winning streak going along. Against a very strong Matthews opponent. I mean, that is probably about as good as you get for 8-9 to have a 6-4 and 8-2 team that are both on a tear this year. going up against one another. But, great job for Springfield here. I am going to sprint past it, unfortunately, because I want to cover these last 4 before we have to wrap up the show in 4 minutes. So I'm going a minute each. Edison finishes up the season 10-0, undefeated. Nick Colbert, excited to see Edison play Mooney. That's going to be their first round matchup. It's going to be eventful, to say the least. I'm excited to see what Mooney's defense does there, and if they have an offense show up. At Edison, really just a great year all in all. Only 73 points allowed by their defense, 427 put up by the offense. It was a great year for them, and they rightfully earn a high seed here in the postseason. They finish off with the 4 seed, so back-to-back home games they will get. Orange, unfortunately for them, not as fruitful. They go 0-10, following a 42-0 loss to Kirtland the final week of the season. 51 points for, 430 against on the entire year. Not quite what they were hoping out of Pepper Pike. For Salem, it was a tough fight all the way to the end. They do hold on to a postseason spot. They nearly pulled the upset against West Branch on Saturday. I heard that there was over 5,000 people in attendance for Saturday's matchup between Salem and West Branch. Our viewership was astronomical as well. It was probably one of the most watched games this season, both with in-person and online eyes. One of the most watched games, and both these teams should be very proud of pulling in those kind of numbers, and we expect to see those kind of numbers from them in the postseason now too, as you could see Salem potentially knock off Canton South here in round 1, and we expect to see West Branch make a nice little postseason run after 2 phenomenal seasons from both of their programs, and finishing off with that kind of rivalry game only sets the stage for what hopefully may lead to a playoff rematch.
Yeah.
Any thoughts on any of those teams that I ran through? It left you about a minute if you want to say anything.
I don't have too many thoughts. I just can't wait for the playoffs, man. I want to see some of these matchups and start previewing.
I know. I'm so hesitant to just okay, let's start talking now. It's like, ooh, we have to say something for Thursday and Friday.
One more day. We'll get there.
Right. I got to figure out what to talk about on tomorrow's show. That could be interesting.
Yeah, it's go time.
Yep. Full steam ahead here on your sports network. Keep in mind, $9.99. You get all games going on in the network on Friday. So make sure if you want to tune in to your favorite teams, you get on that so you can see them here on your sports network. It's been a pleasure talking about all your teams for the regular season. For those of you who did not make it, congratulations on finishing out another season. Best of luck as you move forward. For the teams that did make it, here we go. The road to Canton starts now. This has been the Casual Sports Podcast Power Hour, coming up next on your sports network.